Everything changed one rainy Thursday night. I was grading essays at the dining table when Daniel's phone buzzed on the counter. He was in the shower, and I wasn't the type to snoop. But this time, something tugged at me. A strange instinct I couldn't shake. The screen lit up with a message preview. Just 5 words. Can't wait to see you. My heart froze. It wasn't my name. And in that moment, my life, the life I thought was solid and safe, began to unravel. I stared at it, my hands trembling so badly, I nearly dropped the phone. My throat felt dry, my pulse pounding in my ears. I knew that sentence wasn't meant for me. But still, I prayed it was innocent. Maybe it was a client? A coworker? A joke between friends? I wanted to believe that. I needed to believe that. Daniel walked back into the room, towel around his waist, hair dripping wet. He saw me standing there with his phone in my hand. His eyes widened for a split second before narrowing. "What are you doing with my phone?" he asked sharply. I swallowed hard, my voice breaking. "Who sent this, Daniel?" I held the phone up, my hand shaking. He froze, then forced a laugh that didn't reach his eyes. Come on. It's just a client. Don't make a big deal out of nothing." But his tone, it was too quick, too rehearsed. And in that instant I knew. The first crack. I didn't sleep that night. I lay awake beside him, staring at the ceiling while he snored softly, as if nothing had happened. My mind raced with questions. Who was she? How long had it been going on? How could I have been so blind? The next morning, while he was in the shower again, I checked his phone. My hands were shaking so badly, I thought I might drop it, but I pushed through. That's when I found them. Dozens of messages. Some flirty, some explicit, some so intimate they made me feel sick. And the name attached to them made my blood run cold. Lily. My sister. At first, I thought I was hallucinating. I blinked, reread the name, the words. But it was there, undeniable. My husband and my sister had been exchanging messages for months. Last night was incredible. When can we sneak away again? Emily will never know. I dropped the phone, my knees buckling beneath me. The room spun. The betrayal wasn't just from Daniel. It was from the one person I trusted second only to him. My sister. My Lily. That afternoon, I called her. My voice shook, but I kept it calm. "Hey, can you come over? I need to talk." She arrived an hour later, her usual confident smile plastered on her face. "What's up, Em?" I didn't waste time. I tossed Daniel's phone onto the table. "Explain this." Her eyes flicked to the screen. For a moment, guilt flashed across her face. But then she straightened, crossing her arms defiantly. "Emily, it just happened. We didn't mean for it to. But you and Daniel, you've been drifting apart for years. He needed someone. I was there." Her words cut deeper than any knife. "You were my sister," I whispered, tears streaming down my cheeks. "How could you do this to me?" She looked away, her jaw tight. "I'm sorry, but we love each other." My heart shattered into 1,000 pieces. That night, I confronted Daniel again. This time, I had the evidence. "Daniel," I said coldly, holding up his phone. "How long have you been sleeping with my sister?" He froze, color draining from his face. "Emily, Don't lie," I snapped. "I read the messages." He slumped into a chair, running his hands over his face. It just happened. I didn't plan it. I love you, but things between us. Don't you dare," I hissed, tears blurring my vision. "Don't you dare put this on me." He tried to reach for my hand, but I pulled away as if his touch burned me. In that moment, something inside me snapped. The woman who had loved unconditionally, who had sacrificed, who had trusted blindly, she died. And in her place, someone new was born. Someone who wanted revenge. The days that followed were a blur of numbness and rage. I went through the motions of life, teaching my classes, grading papers, but inside, I was boiling. My phone buzzed constantly with messages from Lily. Please talk to me. I didn't mean to hurt you. We can figure this out. I deleted them all without replying. Daniel, meanwhile, acted like nothing had happened. He still kissed my cheek in the mornings, still asked about my day, still pretended we were fine. The audacity of it made me sick. They thought they could betray me and go on with their lives, as if I didn't matter. But they underestimated me. One evening, I sat alone in my car, gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. Rain pounded against the windshield, the city lights blurring through the water. And that's when it hit me. I didn't have to be their victim. I didn't have to cry and beg and fall apart. I could fight back. Not with violence. Not with screams. But with something far more powerful. Patience. Strategy. Revenge. I whispered into the rain-soaked night. They're going to regret ever betraying me. And in that vow, I found my strength again. Grief comes in stages, they say. Denial, anger, bargaining, depression, acceptance. But when the betrayal comes from the two people you trusted most, those stages don't follow in neat little boxes. They collide, they loop, they twist into knots so tangled you feel like you'll never breathe again. That was my life in the weeks after I discovered the truth. Everywhere I turned, there were ghosts of what I'd lost. The couch where Daniel and I had cuddled during winter storms. The coffee mugs Lily had bought me last Christmas, still sitting in the cupboard. The family photos on the walls, smiling faces that now looked like lies. I would wake up in the middle of the night, drenched in sweat, hearing Daniel's laughter in my head, but it wasn't with me. It was with her. I started to question everything. Every moment, every memory. Had they been sneaking glances at each other during family dinners? Had those late nights at work really been their secret rendezvous? Was I just a placeholder in my own marriage? I barely ate. I barely slept. At school, I forced smiles for my students, but my eyes felt heavy, my heart hollow. One evening, I broke down on the phone with my best friend, Rachel. She'd been my rock since college, the one person I knew would never judge me. Emily, she said firmly after listening to me sob, you cannot let them win. They think you're weak right now. They think they can have their affair and still keep you in their orbit. You need to take your power back. Her words struck a chord. Power. That was what I'd lost. I was the betrayed wife, the heartbroken sister, the victim. But maybe I didn't have to stay that way. The turning point came one night when I saw Daniel asleep beside me, his phone buzzing quietly on the nightstand. I didn't need to look to know it was her. I stared at him, my chest heaving, every nerve in my body screaming. How dare he? How dare they? That was the moment rage truly bloomed inside me. Not the kind that burns out quickly, but the kind that simmers steady and cold. I realized something chilling. My pain could be fuel. At first, I fantasized about dramatic confrontations, telling our families, ruining their reputations, storming into Lily's apartment and screaming until the neighbors called the police. But no, that would be too easy for them. They'd twist it, make me look hysterical. I wanted something slower, smarter, something that would dismantle their lives piece by piece until they were left with nothing but ashes. So I started writing. Yes, writing. A notebook I kept hidden in my desk at school, filled with ideas. Some wild, some cruel, some clever. I wrote down everything they cared about, everything they valued. Daniel's business, his reputation, his finances, Lily's career, her social life, her friendships. And then I wrote ways to strike at each one. To pull this off, I had to be careful. I had to make them believe I was broken, defeated, maybe even forgiving. So I played the part. To Daniel, I said, I want to try counseling. Maybe we can fix this. He nodded eagerly, relief flooding his face. Of course, Sam. That's what I want too. To Lily, I sent a single text. I need time. Don't contact me for now. She replied, I understand. I love you. The irony of that nearly made me throw up, but outwardly I stayed calm, patient, obedient. Inside I sharpened my knives. Revenge, I learned, wasn't just about anger. It was about timing, about precision. I researched Daniel's company, digging through public records, contracts, reviews. I knew things about his finances most wives wouldn't, and I started connecting dots. Small mistakes, shady dealings he thought no one had noticed. As for Lily, I knew her weaknesses better than anyone. Her need to be admired, her obsession with social media, her fragile ego beneath the bravado. And I knew exactly how to use those against her. One night, as I brushed my hair in the mirror, I barely recognized the woman staring back at me. Gone was the soft, naive Emily who believed in fairy tales. In her place was someone colder, sharper, a woman who had been broken and rebuilt stronger. I whispered to my reflection, You're not the victim anymore. You're the storm. And for the first time since the betrayal, I smiled. I started small, subtle. I gathered every bit of evidence of their affair, screenshots, messages, emails. I organized them into neat folders, labeled and hidden. A weapon I would use when the time was right. Then I started planting seeds. Casual conversations with mutual friends, hinting at Daniel's long nights and Lily's mystery man. Nothing concrete, just whispers. Enough to stir curiosity. I could see the doubt flicker in their eyes when they talked to me. Seeds of suspicion were spreading. And that was just the beginning. Weeks turned into months. Daniel relaxed, thinking I was moving past it. Lily stayed quiet, assuming I just needed space. Neither of them realized I was constructing their downfall, brick by brick. Late at night, I would sit by the fireplace, notebook in hand, refining my plan, crossing out the messy ideas, circling the brilliant ones. I wasn't rushing. Oh no. I wanted them comfortable, secure, blind, because that was when the knife would sink deepest. On the anniversary of my wedding day, I stood alone in my backyard, staring up at the night sky. I remembered our vows. Daniel's trembling voice as he promised to love me forever. Lily's tearful smile as she watched us from the front row. And then I whispered my own vow into the darkness. You destroyed my love. You destroyed my trust. Now I'll destroy everything you hold dear. The stars above felt like witnesses to my oath. I closed my notebook, my plan finally complete. It was time. The night before it all began, I barely slept. My notebook lay open on the bedside table, every line, every arrow, every scribble carved into my memory. Tomorrow, I wasn't the broken wife. I wasn't the betrayed sister. Tomorrow, I was the executioner. The first target was Daniel. His company thrived on one thing, reputation. He had built himself up as a man of integrity, a businessman who treated clients like family. But I knew the cracks in that facade. I started with an anonymous email campaign. Screenshots of his texts with Lily, carefully edited for maximum impact, sent to a handful of his clients and business associates. Subject line: Is this the man you trust with your contracts? By the next week, the phone calls started coming. Daniel stormed around the house, slamming doors, barking into his phone. They're lies. Fabricated. I heard him shout one night. His face was pale, sweat beading on his forehead. I sipped my tea quietly in the kitchen, pretending not to hear. Inside, I was smiling. Lily was next. She lived for her image, her curated Instagram feed, her glamorous selfies, her hundreds of friends. She loved being admired, craved it, needed it. So I attacked her where it hurt most. I created a fake profile, one that looked like a concerned friend. And then I began leaking screenshots of her messages with Daniel, carefully crafted stories, subtle but damning posts on forums where mutual acquaintances would stumble across them. Within weeks, whispers became shouts. Her followers dropped. Invitations dried up. People began asking, "Isn't she the one who?" Her perfect little social kingdom began to crumble. But I wasn't done. Oh no. I gathered every piece of evidence, texts, photos, timestamps, and mailed them to my parents. Our parents. When my mother called me, her voice was shaking. "Emily, is this true? About Lily and Daniel?" I stayed quiet for a long moment. Then I whispered, "Yes, Mom. It's all true." The silence on the other end was deafening. Our parents had adored Lily. She was the golden child, the charming one. But now they saw her for what she was. At the next family gathering, the tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. My mother refused to even look at Lily. My father's disappointment was a storm cloud hanging over the table. Lily left early, her cheeks flushed, her eyes wet. I watched her go, my heart steady. Daniel thought he was clever, hiding his financial skeletons. But I'd been married to him for years. I knew where to dig. I found the discrepancies, the shady tax maneuvers, the contracts signed in bad faith. With one phone call to the right authorities, I set the wheels in motion. It started small, an audit notice. Then larger, frozen accounts, angry business partners. The night he realized what was happening, he sat at the kitchen table with his head in his hands. "I don't understand," he muttered. "Everything's falling apart." I stood in the doorway, arms crossed, and said nothing. Because I did understand. Perfectly. The piece de resistance came months later. By then, Daniel and Lily were clinging to each other like drowning rats, isolated and cornered. I set the final trap. An invitation. To both of them. A fake mediation session where I pretended I wanted closure. We met in a quiet rented office. I sat across from them, calm, collected. Daniel looked haggard, his suit ill-fitting, his face drawn. Lily was pale, her eyes darting nervously. "Why are we here, Emily?" she asked. I leaned forward, sliding a thick folder across the table. "Because I want you both to see what you've lost." Inside were the compiled results of my revenge. Client letters, social media screenshots, legal notices. Their destruction in paper form. They flipped through the pages, their faces draining of color. Daniel's voice cracked. You did this?" I smiled, cold and sharp. "Every single piece." Lily slammed the folder shut. "You're insane." "No," I whispered, standing. "I'm free." And with that, I walked out, leaving them in the ruins of their own making. The days after were a storm of chaos. Daniel's business collapsed under lawsuits and investigations. He lost clients, money, credibility. Within months, he was bankrupt. Lily became a pariah, her friendships gone, her social media accounts abandoned after relentless harassment from people who now saw her as a homewrecker. They tried to turn to each other, but even that bond fractured under the weight of their losses. Within a year, they weren't even speaking. And me? I rebuilt. Slowly. Carefully. I sold a house, moved into a smaller place. Focused on my students. Reconnected with old friends. Piece by piece, I reclaimed myself. One evening, Nearly 2 years later, I saw Lily standing outside a cafe, alone, her hair unkempt, her clothes plain. She looked nothing like the sister I'd once known. For a moment, our eyes met. She opened her mouth, as if to speak, but I turned and walked away. That was my final act of revenge. Indifference. They weren't worth my hatred anymore. When people ask me how I survived it all, I tell them the truth. I didn't survive. The woman I used to be, soft, trusting, naive, she didn't make it through. She died the day I read those messages. But in her place, someone stronger was born. Someone who learned that love can be beautiful, yes, but it can also blind you. And that when betrayal comes, you don't have to let it destroy you. You can let it forge you. Daniel and Lily's lives never recovered. Daniel ended up working odd jobs, his once proud name whispered with disdain in business circles. The man who once strutted through boardrooms now avoided eye contact in grocery stores. Lily faded even faster. Without her online adoration, she crumbled. Friends abandoned her, jobs slipped away, and she drifted into obscurity. They tried reaching out, of course. Daniel sent emails, begging for forgiveness. Lily wrote letters, tear-stained and desperate. I never responded, because forgiveness wasn't mine to give. They had to live with what they'd done. For me, healing didn't come overnight. It came in fragments. Long walks at dawn, laughter with students, cups of tea with Rachel, quiet evenings reading by the fire. Little by little, I remembered what peace felt like. One spring afternoon, I found myself painting again, something I hadn't done since before the betrayal. The brush in my hand, the colors spilling across the canvas, felt like life rushing back into me. And for the first time in years, I felt whole. The last time I saw Daniel was by accident. I was walking downtown when I spotted him sitting on a bench, hunched, his suit wrinkled, his face older than his years. He looked up, recognition flickering in his tired eyes. "Emily," he whispered. I paused, my heart steady. Once his voice could break me, but now it held no power. "I hope you've learned something," I said quietly. He opened his mouth to reply, but I turned and walked away. It wasn't cruelty. It was closure. So here is what I want anyone listening to remember. Betrayal is a wound, yes, but it doesn't have to end your story. You can let it consume you, or you can let it sharpen you. Revenge doesn't always come from fire and fury. Sometimes, the most devastating revenge is patience. Precision. Letting people's own actions unravel them. And in the end, the greatest victory isn't their downfall, it's your freedom. Because when I finally let go of Daniel and Lily, I realized something shocking. They weren't the ones chained to me anymore. I had been chained to them, to my anger, to my grief. And the moment I chose peace, I was free. If you've been betrayed, if someone's broken your heart or your trust, hear me when I say this. You are not powerless. You are not finished. And you are not defined by what they did to you. You get to choose how the story ends. And sometimes the sweetest ending is walking away with your head held high while they drown in the consequences